Even if you've never touched a Zelda game in your life, it's likely that most of you will at least know who Zelda is, right? That's right, it's the beloved princess the series is named after, yet somehow never serves as the main protagonist. Unless you count the, she didn't deserve this. But that's not canon, so screw that. Princess Zelda is what she is, a princess, seemingly and endlessly bound to serve as the damsel in distress in some shape or form. But she also does some awesome stuff of her own, like creating glowing balls and sealing away ancient demon warlords. But the big question here is, will we ever see Zelda become queen? As far as the mainline Zelda canon goes, Zelda has never been queen, at least not in game, even when the rest of the elusive royal family is nowhere to be seen. With Breath of the Wild 2, there is an opportunity here that we might actually see this finally come to fruition since, well, everyone including the rest of the royal family is dead, and the kingdom has remained leaderless for the past 100 years. But before we dive into the possibilities for Breath of the Wild's highly anticipated sequel, let's go over some of the history of Zelda's matriarchy, the complexity of the royal family in general, and how Zelda with the highest of royal titles has eluded us so far. Now, it's obvious that Zelda has been queen on multiple occasions off-screen, that is to say, in between games. But as one of the central characters of the series, it's a bit of a shame that Zelda only gets promoted after the credits roll. The series isn't called The Legend of Princess Zelda after all. I would love to see her in the position of power for once and see how she would rule the Kingdom of Hyrule, because so far the kings of Hyrule have been rather idiots when it comes to ruling over the land.
I know, let's hold a competition of strength and might, and the victor, who would surely be able to kick all of our asses, is allowed to touch this legendary blade, which when pulled from this box would bring upon destruction to this entire kingdom, and thus should never fall into the hands of evil.
Your Majesty, are you sure that's such a good idea?
I have spoken! Hello there, King. Ganondorf, my trusty friend who would never betray me in a million years. How have you been, old chap?
But my liege, can you imagine the potential this technology has for this kingdom for years to come?
Nope, bury it all. Oh, and be a good man and chase away those Sheikah chaps that helped us in the war.
But my liege...
I have spoken!
Like I said, idiots. There seems to be something strange going on with queens in Zelda lore in general, as we never actually see them. They are always absent. We have seen kings in the flesh as early as A Link to the Past, and subsequently in The Wind Waker, and 2 kings in the Minish Cap, that being the spirit of King Gustav and the present-day King Daltus. Yet in all instances, no queen by their side, nor are they even referenced or mentioned, ever. That is until Breath of the Wild. Even though we don't know what she looked like or even her name, this is the first time in the history of Zelda canon that the existence of a queen is actually acknowledged. Proof of this lies within both creating a champion, which refers to Zelda's mother as queen on multiple occasions, as well as Urbosa's diary in the Champion's Ballad DLC, in which Urbosa states, quote, "It is always a pleasure to see the Queen of Hyrule. I told her that Zelda is sure to grow up into a dignified and beautiful queen, just like her mother." Now, fantasy stories and fairy tales tend to simplify the aspect of royalty. With good reason, of course, since a lot of it is partially aimed towards kids. We simply have a king and a queen, easy as that. In real life, however, royal families are a lot more complicated. I won't turn this into an entire history lesson, but one of the basic things to know is that there isn't always a king and queen involved. For instance, Britain has a queen, but no king. The Netherlands has both. But why? This has to do with historical and patriarchal traditions. It's a bit similar to the old-fashioned custom where a woman inherits her husband's last name upon marriage. When a woman marries a king, she tends to receive the ceremonial title of queen or queen consort, but let's just keep it simple. However, when it's the other way around, the man does not inherit the title of king, but rather prince. There's only a few rare examples where an exception was made, and the husband was granted the title of king, which is why Queen Elizabeth's husband is called Prince Philip. Well, technically his full title is this, but let's not go there. It's Prince. And just in case you were wondering, since this is a Japanese series, it works the same way in Asian cultures as well. Except here, instead of a king or queen, it's called emperor or empress. But the title of prince and princess are the same. Going back to Zelda, as stated before, she obviously has been queen in the past. Just not for us, the player, to see. After the Minish Cap, she would no doubt be crowned after King Daltus passes or gives up the title. After Ocarina of Time, she would eventually become queen in all 3 timeline branches, and in the Downfall and Adult branch rather quickly, as the King of Hyrule is implied to have died during Ganondorf's attack on Hyrule Castle. Furthermore, after the events of A Link to the Past, she will eventually become queen, which leads into A Link Between Worlds, in Phantom Hourglass after the founding of New Hyrule, and after the defeat of Ganondorf in Twilight Princess, just to name a few. In each game where we see a descendant of Zelda, it's clear that at some point before all of this, the previous incarnation of Zelda married and eventually had offspring, since the bloodline of Goddess Hylia would have ended if she didn't. In between some games, there's even multiple generations of royalty. As an example, in Spirit Tracks, the Zelda we see here is not the daughter of Tetra, but rather her granddaughter. Keep that in mind for later. The closest we've seen Zelda to becoming queen was in Twilight Princess. This game is set to take place more than 100 years after Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask, and there's no appearance or even mention of any other royal family members besides Zelda herself. She seems to be at the steering wheel alone, and has the soldiers under her command, yet is still referred to as princess multiple times in-game. She's also the one to issue the surrender of the kingdom to Zant, something a princess wouldn't have the authority to do under normal circumstances. Turns out that Zelda was on the brink of becoming queen, but the invasion of Zant prevented this from happening. Without an official coronation ever taking place, she remained with the title of princess throughout the events of the game. As a matter of fact, it's highly likely that the gift Link was supposed to deliver to Hyrule Castle at the beginning of the game, which is the sword crafted by Russell, was part of Zelda's crowning ceremony. And we find even more confirmation of this in a more unusual place. That being the Twilight Princess trading card deck, which I didn't even know existed, to be completely honest. The deck holds a total of 86 cards, of which 22 are character cards. The description on Zelda's card reads, "She is shortly to be crowned Queen of Hyrule," which indicates that the previous king or queen has recently passed away, making her next in line for the title. So close, but yet so far. When I said that we've never seen Zelda as queen in-game, that's actually not completely true. We have. It's just that it's not canon. In Hyrule Warriors, Zelda is confirmed to be queen by producer Yosuke Hayashi, who states, quote, "In Hyrule Warriors, Princess Zelda is actually Queen Zelda. She has an army as a queen would, and Link is a trainee. But as the story unfolds, the relationship between the two greatly changes." Additionally, Aonuma also mentions this in an interview, quote, "We definitely change how Zelda is used and position her where it's best for the experience. That is, as queen and one of the playable characters in Hyrule Warriors." We also have another instance in which we see Zelda becoming queen, however, this one is even less canonical than Hyrule Warriors. It comes from the A Link to the Past manga, written by Shotaro Ishinomori and published in 1992. It's an alternate version of the events from A Link to the Past. At the end of the story, Zelda has become queen and Link is the head of the royal guards and knights of Hyrule. It even states that this success is bittersweet as their duties keep them apart, even though they were once so close and sharing an adventure and even coming together in dreams. Again, this is of course not part of the mainline Zelda canon. It's nice to know it exists, but I'm not counting it as a confirmation for the title of queen for our beloved princess. Now, I don't want to overthink this too much since we are dealing with a fantasy series here, but one thing that I started to wonder about while writing this script was, how does all this tie together with the bloodline of Goddess Hylia? Historically, we don't know who Zelda's previous husbands were, though it is hinted that in some cases this could have been Link himself. So for this example, let's satisfy the Zelink fans among you for a little bit. My question would be, what if Link and Zelda had a son, and only a son? Does the power of the goddess continue but simply skips the son until eventually a female is born later down the line? Because similar to how the hero is always male, the one to possess and awaken Hylia's sealing power has always been female. So this seems to be a key element to this whole goddess thing. The reason I'm posing this question is because, going back to Spirit Tracks, during the final confrontation with Malladus, Zelda prays to receive the power from Goddess Hylia, but not from her mother, but rather Tetra, her grandmother. This seems to suggest that Tetra might have had a son who eventually became king of New Hyrule, and then continued to have a daughter, that being the Zelda from Spirit Tracks. It only makes sense that of the royal pair, only one of them carries the bloodline of Goddess Hylia, because, you know, incest and all. But let's assume that Hyrule's royal family are decent people who do not resort to such abominable customs. We see something very similar in Breath of the Wild. Rather than her mother, Zelda mentions while praying at the Spring of Wisdom that it was actually her grandmother who possessed the power of the goddess. This has led fans to believe that Zelda's mother married into the royal bloodline and has no connection to goddess Hylia herself. By that definition, Zelda has inherited this divine power from King Rome's side of the family, since if it was from her mother's side, the queen would have had Hylia's power as well. So in this case, the power was passed from Rome's mother to him. However, it never awakens within him because of the conflicting genders, I guess. Hence the power ultimately lands on Zelda when she is born. Now let's close off this video with Breath of the Wild 2, saving the best for last. Because of the Great Calamity, Zelda is the only living member left of the royal family of Hyrule. If there's any chance for the kingdom to persevere, Zelda would at some point have to become queen. Depending on how much time has passed between Breath of the Wild 1 and 2, she might already carry the title. Who knows? If not, then her official coronation will probably take place at the end of the game, since, you know, priorities and all. Nintendo could of course do the same thing they always do and have Zelda become queen after the end, and leave it off screen for our imaginations to fill in. But I personally think it would be great if we finally see it happen with our own eyes. Even if it's just during the credits. When meeting the spirit of Zelda's father, King Rome Bosphorama's Hyrule, he carries the title of the last king of Hyrule. The last king? Maybe, but last queen? Hopefully not. Now it could of course be that Zelda feels no motivation to establish a new monarchy, but this would contradict her statement during the true ending, where she says that she wants to restore the kingdom to its former glory and perhaps even beyond. A kingdom needs proper leadership, and who else than the last remaining member of the royal bloodline to fulfill that role? And going back to Zelink for a moment, perhaps we will see Link in a position of power for a change. A royal prince rather than a knight. I mean, there's obviously something going on between those two, am I right? Assuming that both will survive Ganon's onslaught, I couldn't see a more fitting ending than Ganondorf finally being defeated once and for all, and a royal wedding at the end between the two most iconic characters to chime in a new era in the Zelda franchise. Thanks a lot for watching, everyone. Before I leave, it's time to introduce my latest Patreon supporters. We have a whole bunch of new faces, so please welcome Julia Franken, Thomas W. Drury, Almudena Carrasco-Pazos, I hope I said that right, Lucy Gannon, Tristan Van Danzik, Jack Thomas, Jax Powers, Twilight Wolfo, Jessica Chapman, Rachel Mills, Milo90, Dantes Sevilla, and Dusty Day. A big thanks to each and every one of you for joining. This is just awesome. See you all next week and continue to stay safe. This is Don signing off, and have a good one.